Hey guys, it's Merce. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. So this video is going to be a wrap-up of the readathon that we did for A House of 100 Whispers by Graham Masterton. This is going to be a little bit different of a wrap-up because it's only one book, but what I wanted to talk about was just like what people were thinking and what they were feeling, what some of the theories were, and what was happening in the book, as well as my impressions on a few things as well, and just kind of share kind of just this collective journey that we took reading this book. It was not my idea to choose this book for the readathon. This was actually an idea that was presented by a commenter, and a few people were like, oh, you know, I really want to read this book. Can we do this? And so this is why the readathon kind of happened. It was really cool. We did a daily check-in and talked a little bit about the chapters that we read that day. The book was split up into 7 segments so that we would have 6 chapters, about 40 to 50 pages to read a day for 7 days. It was very leisurely, and that's one thing I really liked about it. This book came in the Abominable Book Club box. I can't remember which month it was. I'll find it and put it around somewhere. Once I had read the synopsis, I was like, ooh, this sounds really moody and really interesting, even though it was a bit vague. Like you weren't sure exactly what the book was going to be about. A lot of things were surprising. There was a lot of just really cool mechanics going on in the book, so we're going to talk about those as much as possible. Let's go ahead and start with chapters 1 through 6. And this is really like the first impression that we get, and it's pretty exciting. So let's talk about what happens in these chapters, and then let's talk about the first impressions that everyone was having. In these chapters, we get to meet Rob and Vicky, who are married, and they have a son named Timmy. He's 5 years old. We also get to meet another married couple, who is Martin and Catherine. Martin and Rob are brothers. And the last couple is Portia and Grace is Rob and Martin's sister. These couples then all come together at their father's house in Dartmoor because he has been murdered. So they're there to sort of, just sort everything out, read the will, decide what they're going to do with the house, like that type of stuff. It's really apparent right away that there are major cracks in these relationships with these family members, that there is a lot of tension, that there's a lot of resentment, that there's a lot of baggage between these people. But as the adults are trying to get everything together, Timmy suddenly, seemingly, just disappears. And this kicks off the story. So in these chapters, there were already a lot of hints being dropped. There was some foreshadowing, there was some things going on that really added to the atmosphere, the tension, and the mood. And it was very, very intriguing just right from the get-go. Commenters like Taylor Murphy and Kelsey Babses were definitely getting vibes of The Haunting of Hill House. And Kelsey actually was inspired and had this whole entire theory about what was happening with the house and Timmy and everything just off of these 6 chapters alone. And it's really cool. You should definitely check it out. It's in the community tab if you want to read it under the chapters 1 through 6. So that was really compelling and interesting. We were all pretty much chewing on that and thinking about that. The momentum and the pacing was also really good. Like, just for myself, it was so easy to just slip in and to start reading. Jillian Jiggs, BookTube with Amy, Bernard Mulligan also felt the same way. And Witchy Fingers said, I just finished a really great book last night, so I was worried this would be difficult to get into. It was not. It took off immediately and the 6 chapters flew by. And that's exactly how I think for most of us it felt. It felt just so easy to drop into. It was so great. I love when that happens. We were also talking about a few theories about who killed Rob's father, Herbert. Like, could it have been a squatter? Was it a ghost? What was it? And so we were having a lot of fun discussions like that. So everybody's brain was already kind of like working and like picking up on little hints here and there. In this beginning section, we did have one concern, which was from Heidi Locke. I think as a parent, I would be a tad bit more devastated had my only child disappeared. Rob and Vicky are definitely not losing their cool. You know, they seem to be very reserved. They seem to be trying to hold it together. They are not, getting emotional about Timmy being gone. For myself, I was okay with that. I kind of prefer it when it's not just people getting hysterical. But I think the thing with fear and anxiety is that everyone expresses that so differently that I think we all have our own way of, I guess, kind of like perceiving what we would think would be an appropriate reaction. But this is something that does pop up again, so this was a bit of an issue for readers as we kept reading. In chapters 7 through 12, the search for Timmy begins. The police are there. There are volunteers looking for him inside and outside of the house, and even on the outer, areas of the surrounding land or so. So we have a lot of people looking for Timmy, and we also get to see these relationships with the family members, how very disjointed they are. They don't really seem to be very close. They don't really seem to be sharing the same fears or concerns. Most of the family, except for Rob and Vicky, seem to be feeling a little bit inconvenienced about having to deal with this thing of Timmy missing. There's also a discovery that's made in the attic, which is a bunch of suitcases. We also get to see our first supernatural encounter, which happens to Vicky. Vicky thinks that she's hearing whispering. So she goes out into the hallway to go and find out who is whispering, and she finds something that she does not expect at all. A new character comes on, and his name is John Kipling, and he is leading one of the searches for Timmy. But after some conversation with Rob and Vicky, they realize that he has a lot of information about Dartmoor, like about legends, myths, folklores, and the history also. So he's kind of sharing a bunch of stuff with them, which was utterly fascinating. It was so cool. I really loved all of the history that was coming out of this book. It was really, really cool. And then this is when the idea of there being a priest hole in the house somewhere is a place where Timmy could possibly be hiding or be lost or be trapped in. So this becomes their focus now, to find this hidden room, because they can't find Timmy anywhere else. So this is really interesting, and Kipling is trying to aid them into finding this room. BookTube with Amy says, I'm really loving all the local folklore and superstition that's being added to an already tense and unusual situation. There's also a point where a search dog is, it's being asked to come into the house, but it utterly refuses. It's one of those, like, you couldn't pull me in there with a tank, it was like one of those things like dogs are, you're just pulling on them and there's just like no way. So the dog had a huge hesitation to go into the house, which, prompted, I think, a lot of us to think, there must be something spooky in the house. And Jen at Literary Lane says, the fact that the dog didn't want to venture into the house was definitely an ominous sign. Witchy Fingers says, is anyone else finding the behavior of the characters, specifically around the missing child, a bit unbelievable? They seem too calm, don't they? So we were definitely getting into some discussions about that. Bernard Mulligan shares a story of when his little sister went missing on Coney Island. They couldn't find her. It was one of those things where, they're like doing something for 2 seconds and they turn around and she's gone. They couldn't find her. It was really a horrific incident. They did find her in the end, but he was sharing how the reactions of the family members were all really, really vastly different. Ophelia is Falling says, I cannot stand Martin or his wife. There, I said it. I think the two characters that you kind of come into the book hating the most is Martin and Catherine. And Catherine is very kind of bitchy and snobby and just really not a joy to be around. She seems inconvenienced by anything and everything. And, it's like she just can't be bothered. And Martin is, you know, a person who's very driven by money and affluence, and he's just also kind of just insufferable. So those two characters were really, really fun to hate. In chapters 13 through 18, we get to meet a new character, and her name is Ada, and she's a charmer, or a witch. She's asked by John Kipling to come to the house and just, you know, give it a vibe check, basically. You know, do you feel anything? Is there anything here? Can you sense Timmy? Like, what's going on? But while they are investigating, they actually find the priest hole. And Ada really wants to bring a friend of hers back to check this priest hole out for himself, because he has a little bit more knowledge than her in some areas. So she just feels more comfortable if she could bring him. And his name is Francis. There are some other things that happen in this chapter that get all of us kind of like, ooh, you know, this must mean this then, you know? So we're back to the drawing board about our theories. Ophelia is following and says, I wonder if there's a connection between the window with old Doer and the priest hole. So there is a window in the story that is mentioned a couple of times, well, more than a couple of times, and it does stand out as you're reading. And it is a stained glass, and it has a very specific type of image on it. It's referred to as Old Doer. And he has his own legend, and this stained glass window is believed to be there to keep the devil away. Bernard Mulligan says, to me, the supernatural elements in this story seem strongly inspired by Celtic folklore. Taylor Murphy says, I can't be the only one who feels like everyone is not taking this missing kid thing seriously. Why does it feel like no big deal to these people? Ada arrives with Francis, who is wearing a paisley purple suit, which I love so much. And along with Rob and Vicky, they go upstairs to examine the priest hole to see if there's any clues there, to see if there's any evidence of someone living there or someone hiding somewhere further in the walls or anywhere else. If there's just any information that they can find within the room at all, whether that be something esoteric or spiritual or religious or whatever, that's what they're looking for. Zen Whisperer, I already finished the book, so I can't wait to jump in with everyone at the end. I think a lot of people had finished up with the book pretty quickly because it seemed like everyone was having a hard time like not continue on to the next chapters. Regina's Haunted Library says, I want to meet Ada in real life. I would like to meet Ada too. John Kipling and Francis also would be really cool to meet. Jen at Literary says, I actually ended up finishing the book today as I just couldn't put it down. So in chapters 25 to 30, I mean, things are really just taking off. A lot of stuff is happening. We're learning a lot. We're learning so much about the house and whatever is residing within it and how it works and just a bunch of information. So I can't really tell you too much what's going on here, but I can say that there is a Catholic priest who comes. His name is Father Salter, and he's gonna come and also examine the house and see what he can feel and extract from, you know, what's going on there. There is a sentence here that's describing Father Salter, and it says, when this man took off his raincoat, Rob saw that he was wearing a dark gray tweed jacket, a black shirt, and a dog collar. And at first I really thought he meant like an actual dog collar, because I didn't realize that the priest, like whatever this is called occasionally a dog collar. So like in my mind I was like, he's wearing bondage gear?
I know, I knew that. I was just kidding.
BookTube with Amy says, all the research Francis has done is really interesting, and I'm loving reading about that. Francis has, like John Kipling, but in his own area of expertise, is sharing so much fascinating information. A lot of it is about witchcraft and ritual and druid magic and stuff like that. There is some dialogue here between Francis and Rob, and you know, Rob is like, you don't have to come and, check out our house. And Frances says, I have to, Rob. It's my destiny. Sometimes you're confronted with things in your life and you realize that you have to deal with them. You don't have a choice because that's what you were born for. And this sort of philosophy, I guess, is definitely within the book more than once. In chapters 31 through 36, shit starts hitting the fan, let's just say. It's getting pretty wild, it's getting pretty gory. There's a lot of unexpected things that happen. There was a few times in these last chapters that I actually had a jump scare in a book, which is so weird. I was just reading along the page and then suddenly this unexpected action just kind of took me so off guard that I was like freaked out. Regina's Haunted Library says, the scene with Frances was out of control. And yes, it was. Ophelia is Falling says, whoa, Frances, I wasn't expecting that. Me neither. So in the final chapter, things are happening and things conclude and the ending comes around. So I can't tell you much about that, but I can definitely share like some of the final thoughts that people had. Bernard Mulligan says, the story did have a lot of very unrealistic parts outside of the supernatural, but I accept that as part of the book's style. It didn't seem to me like it was meant to be taken too seriously. It was just meant to be a supernatural joyride. Either way, I learned a lot of interesting stuff about the occult and bone fertilizer. It was a good read. The bone fertilizer is a cool little detail. You'll have to read it in the book. BookTube with Amy says, I really enjoy this book as a whole. I really liked that we got answers to a lot of our questions. I liked the very last scene as well. It felt very 80s horror film where it just leaves you with lots of dread and intrigue. Ophelia is Falling says, I love the last bit the best. Julian Dick said, the readathon was so fun. Thanks for hosting. I agree with you about the ending. That's why I rated it 4 stars out of 5, but overall I really enjoyed the book. So if you want to, you can see all of my uncensored thoughts, I guess, in the community tab in the post if you want to. The ending had a lot of kind of different things going on, so it's tying up a lot of loose ends in different ways, and some of those loose ends tied up in a way that I really liked, and some of them I felt were kind of convenient. So there were things that I wish were a little bit different in the ending, but overall the book was so fun to read, so exciting and thrilling. I really enjoyed the writing style, I enjoyed the character development, I enjoyed the story, and kind of all the history and research that went along with it to give it such a compelling backstory. So I found it to be pretty cool. So that was the Readathon wrap up. Thank you so much to everyone who was participating and commenting and reading. And even if you weren't commenting and sharing, it's totally cool. If you're reading with us in the shadows, it's totally cool too. Let me know what you think about this video. I wasn't really sure how to present this. I don't know, like I'm not sure if I did a good job, but if you liked it, please let me know. If you didn't like it, please let me know. But in any case, take care of yourselves, watch out for each other, and I will talk to you next time.